Welcome to The Forgotten, a home for those who are looking to gain facts on numerous murder cases, suspicious deaths, and disappearances. I'm your host, Shayna, and we're here to keep the memories of these victims alive and ensure these cases and people will not be forgotten. Welcome to the Forgotten family. Timothy Pitzen was born on October 18, 2004 in Aurora, Illinois to James and Amy Pitzen. Timothy was their only child and could be described as an outgoing little boy who enjoyed being around everyone. This little boy did not know a stranger. He felt comfortable everywhere. He liked outdoor activities such as being on the playground with his friends, riding his bike, and even go-kart riding. He was your average, energized little boy who, according to outsiders, had a happy life with his parents. He loved his parents very much, and they seemed like the perfect family. James and Amy Pitzen were married in 2004 after meeting at a party in 2003 and maintaining a long distance relationship. Although this story seems typical up to this point, there were some problems beneath the surface. Amy had some successful accomplishments in her past, including her graduation from Libertyville High School and then her graduation from Iowa State University, but she tended to struggle in her personal life. Amy had previously been married and divorced 3 other times and had suffered from depression, which intensified following the divorce from her third husband. During her second marriage to Gray Campbell, he stated that after an argument, Amy had attempted suicide by parking her car on railroad tracks in Ames, Iowa. Thankfully, she decided to leave the tracks before a train could come, and she checked herself into a psychiatric ward where she stayed for almost a week. After this, she was prescribed antidepressants, but she eventually stopped taking them around her divorce. Despite all of these things, James loved Amy and believed that he could help her with this because he would provide a healthy relationship. He was hoping that in turn it would eliminate or minimize her depression. Unfortunately, James may have underestimated the severity of this disease and the damage that it could cause. When James found out that Amy was pregnant with Timothy, he was overjoyed. He had previously been diagnosed with Hodgkin's lymphoma and had to take chemotherapy. Because of the chemotherapy, he was unsure if he would be able to have children. So this was a miracle for him. He was so excited to be a dad finally. Along with the joyous occasion of Timothy's birth came more arguments, specifically about finances. Things came to a head for the couple when James found out that Amy was talking with one of her ex-husbands. James confronted Amy and told her that she needed to make a decision, either stay with him and Timothy and continue building the life that they planned for each other, or she'd go be with her ex. Amy couldn't stand the thought of another divorce, and she chose her family in the end. Now, let's fast forward to May 11th, 2011. Timothy was getting ready for school, and Amy volunteered to take him this morning. James was hesitant about this, though, because the previous night Amy had suffered from vertigo, which can make you very dizzy. Because of this, he said he would go ahead and take Timothy to school, which immediately upset Amy. She asked, "Don't you trust me?" Where James responded, "I just want to make sure everybody gets there safe." After that, James packed Timothy in the car and they headed to school. When they arrived at Greenman Elementary School, James told Timothy that he loved him and to be good. He watched his son run to his kindergarten teacher. His Spider-Man backpack swung behind him as he ran. From this point forward, things take a bit of a strange turn. Amy Pitzen arrived at the school less than an hour later, and she checked Timothy out, stating that there was a family emergency. She took her 2004 Ford Expedition to a repair shop at 10 a.m., and one of the shop employees drove her and Timothy to the Brookfield Zoo. At 3 p.m., her car was ready, so she picked it up, and her and Timothy drove from Aurora, Illinois to Gurnee, Illinois to the Key Lime Cove Resort. On the map, this looks like about an hour trip. Here, Amy decided that this is where they would stay the night. While all this is happening, James Pitzen went to pick up Timothy from school and learned Amy had taken him. He immediately reported them missing and tried numerous attempts of contacting her on her cell phone, but she never picked up. From Gurnee, Illinois, Amy and Timothy drove to the Kalahari Resort in Wisconsin Dells, Wisconsin. On the map, this trip was about 2.5 hours. The next day, they left the resort at 10 a.m., where security footage caught them checking out. From the footage, nothing looks unusual, just a little boy holding his mom's hand as they make their way through the resort halls. And then there's another clip that shows them checking out. You can see Timothy looking around, being a curious 6-year-old little boy, looking at all the people around him, but he doesn't look scared or look like he's in any distress. At 1:30 p.m., Amy called numerous people in her life that she cared about, just explaining her and Timothy were fine and she just needed to get away. She said she needed some space. One specifically interesting call that was made was to James's brother, who she told that everything was fine, but Timothy belongs to me. Timothy could be heard in the background and he sounded normal, but he said he was hungry. This was the last time Timothy was seen or heard from anyone. At 7:25, Amy Pitzer went to a Family Dollar in Winnebago, Illinois, where she was seen buying stationery, and at this point she was by herself. She went to Sullivan's Foods at 8 p.m., which was close by, and then she checked into a room at the Rockford Inn in Rockford, Illinois, between 11:15 and 11:30 p.m. The next day, an employee walked into a gruesome scene at 12:30 p.m. After walking into Amy's room, the employee discovered Amy's dead body. She had slashed her wrists, her neck, and it was determined that she had overdosed on antihistamines. For those who are unaware, antihistamines are over-the-counter drugs that people take for allergy symptoms such as Benadryl. Things started unraveling and it became apparent that Amy had been planning all of this for a long time. She wrote 2 letters, one to a friend and another to her mother, which had already been dropped in the mail, and she also had a note with her at the scene. In the notes, she stated that Timothy was safe but would never be found. And in the note to her mother, she said, "I have taken Timothy somewhere safe. He loves you. Please know there is nothing you could have said or done that would have changed my mind." Multiple items were missing from the scene, which included her cell phone, Timothy's Spider-Man backpack, his toys, clothes, the clothes Amy wore when she checked out of the Kalahari resort, a tube of Crest toothpaste, and an iPass transponder. With the help of her iPass, it was discovered that she had made this trip previously 2 other times, once in February and another in March. Timothy was nowhere in sight, and the rest of his family was incredibly worried. Amy's SUV was found and had diverse vegetation all throughout the bottom, leading investigators to believe she was on a blacktop road initially and eventually went on to gravel and then field. But the interesting thing about this field was that it was one that had not been interfered with by humans, such as, say, crops or mowing. In her SUV, Timothy's blood was found in the back seat, but Timothy was known to suffer nosebleeds, and due to the blood being dried, it was determined to be too old to be from a recent trauma. The knife Amy had used to end her life did not have Timothy's blood on it. It was also discovered that before all of this had started, Amy had made an email that her husband was totally unaware of, but unfortunately, it did not yield any new information. Amy Pitsen's cell phone was found in 2013 on Route 78. This brought hope, but was immediately dashed once investigators determined that there was nothing of value on it. The case went cold until recently in April of 2019. A man in Newport, Kentucky was found who stated he was a victim of sex trafficking and that he had been abused for years by his captors. He stated he was finally able to escape and that he was Timothy Pitzen. Unfortunately, this was all a hoax, and the man was actually 23-year-old Brian Reaney, who recently had been released from prison. He was charged with identity theft and lying to federal investigators, and in December of 2020 agreed to a plea in which he pled guilty. He was sentenced to 2 years in prison. Today, Timothy Pitzen would be 16 years old. At the moment, all we have are the memories of the little boy who liked matchbook cars and McDonald's. If you know anything about this case, please contact the Aurora Police Department. Until next time, stay safe and keep your eyes open.